Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, January 2015 wasn't the driest month on record, but it was close, with barely any snow and unusually high temperatures. Now, we know that puts our water levels at risk for the rest of the year, but it also has a big impact on our plants. So what can you do to keep them alive through this drought winter? Well, Wendy Hansen-Mazette is a horticulturist with the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension, here to give us some tips. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's one of our biggest investments in our property is our landscape.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things where people shut off the irrigation systems in October and then you don't worry about them. And then the sad part is, especially this year, we're going to see a lot of damage when people start looking for their plants to pop out. They don't turn on their irrigation systems till April or May. And the problem is many of our plants are dying already.
Yeah.
You just can't see it.
Now, the Cooperative Extension is here just for that reason. You real quick just tell us what the Cooperative Extension does.
Well, one of the great things about the Cooperative Extension is I run the Master Gardener program also. So we actually have a help desk and people can bring in their plants. We can look at what's going on and try to give them advice. And one of the greatest things is we're non-biased. So we give them all the information from, may it be a watering issue, may it be something that you've got an insect, and then we give you different options on how you control it. We don't tell you this is the product you need to buy or nope, you're done. We'll encourage you. Learn more about your plants, learn more about the environment, and give you options.
And it's a team of experts, and this advice is largely free, right?
Yes, all of it's free. Very rarely do we have programs where we charge. We do soil testing at our Reno office, and that's just pH, salinity, and then we'll check the texture, and that we charge $10 for because we have to pay for the equipment and all the supplies. But otherwise, any information given via email, Facebook, face-to-face, it's all free. There's no charge for all the handouts or any of the diagnostic information we do.
All right, well, let's launch right into it. So, all right, we're now in, what, year 3 of this drought. It's such an unfortunate thing. How big of a problem is this right now where our plants are concerned?
Depending on where you live, it's really a large problem. If you live in an area that has porous soils, like sandy soils, for me, I live in Washoe Valley, so I have a very sandy soil. If I wasn't watering my trees, I can pretty much guarantee I would be seeing a lot of dieback already in my evergreens and definitely in deciduous plants that don't have any leaves and you would think they're fine. But actually what's happening is our cold winds and our drying temperatures and these warm temperatures that are happening, they're pulling moisture out of the soil and they're actually pulling moisture out of the stem tissue. So you're starting to see dieback. And normally the dieback from what we call winter kill comes from the top and goes down. So when you see trees in spring that just don't pop out at the top, but they'll pop out in the bottom 2/3, normally that's a water issue. And the fact is the system still is putting moisture all the way to the top of that tree, even though the tree may be dormant. And evergreens are even in a harder position because they have to continue to push moisture through, even though it's much slower because it's cold, but they have to maintain all those needles. They're still photosynthesizing. And the interesting thing is the root system, if the soil temps aren't really cold, they're still growing slowly. But if there's no moisture in the soil, the salts in the soil actually attack the root system and start killing your root system. So you are losing root system over the winter and you don't even know it if it's dry.
Okay, so typically, say we were having a normal winter with snow and with rain, plants would be dormant. It would be cold enough that they're basically in plant sleep, not taking in water, not growing at the same rate, right?
Right. Snow is one of our best gifts we can have because snow is like putting a blanket over the landscape. And when you put that blanket over, it's not that it's really providing moisture, it's stopping evaporation. It's keeping the soil temps actually warmer, so plants are doing much better because they're not losing that moisture from the ground.
Right.
Most of the landscape plants aren't mulched in this area. People haven't really gotten into that yet. There's some that are. And any plant that actually has mulch, may it be bark, may it be compost, not rock, but it's got to be a living mulch, is actually doing much better than a plant that doesn't have anything around it. And rock is actually worse for most plants because it heats up the soil and then you have more evaporation.
Okay, so what we're seeing now, warm temperatures, dryness, are plants starting to come out of dormancy early?
Some plants are going to be pushing it Not too many. Many people are already starting to call. They're panicking about their daffodils and their tulips, and you don't have to worry about those plants. Those plants are going to do fine. They're going to do fine if it snows. Trees, though, are starting to change, especially the deciduous, and they're starting to pump water more and more up through their branches, and you're going to notice that buds are starting to get plump. Now, this is really bad for anybody who has fruit trees that have what we call low chill requirements. A lot of people who have apricots, they only require what's called 300 hours of chill requirement to have dormancy. Once they hit that 300 hours, they'll pop. So these 60-degree temperatures are going to make these fruit trees bloom. And it's not that you want to actually keep them warm afterwards, because people will put Christmas lights on them. You don't want to do that. You actually want to keep them cold. I've got people up in Lake Tahoe that are already talking to me that are close to the lake where they have no snow, and they've been dealing with warmer temperatures, actually warmer temperatures than we've had down in the valley floor. And their aspens are really starting to plump up in the buds.
So what can you do? I mean, can you stop this from happening? Is there anything you can do?
You can't stop it. It's just nature. We live in an arid environment, and our climate's changing, and we're getting warmer. We always have this kind of false spring. This year it's worse because we don't have the moisture in the soil. Most important thing you can do now is try to get out there and water. If you can, you just want it to be above 40 degrees, and you want to make sure that your soil actually allows the moisture to penetrate. You never want water sitting around any of your plants when it goes into nighttime temperatures, because water can freeze the outside tissue, which is the cambium layer, and if it freezes and thaws, it'll kill your plant. But if it absorbs, our goal is with trees, we want to get moisture down at least 12 inches. Everywhere underneath the drip line, shrubs need moisture, even some perennials will need moisture. If you planted in the last year or two, those plants are the most susceptible to possibly die this year.
So what are the watering techniques that you want to use? I mean, is it a slow drip? You turn the hose on for a very slow drip? Or is it more of a sprinkler type situation?
It varies again on your ground. If you have a clay soil, you're going to want to take that hose out, drag it out, put it on a slow trickle, and make sure that ground is absorbing it. If you've got a sandy soil or a clay loam or a sandy loam, those are faster draining, and you can actually do it more with a sprinkler style or with more high pressure. Everybody always wants to know how many gallons, because not everybody can hook up the hose.
And for how long?
And for how long. And that's the hardest part. Best thing is if you've got a 12-inch screwdriver or something that you can put into the ground, your soil is not frozen. Now it will freeze if it gets really cold after you've watered, but it'll only maybe be an inch or two. But that's a good way. It's a resistance test. You just take a screwdriver, push it as deep as you can, and for how deep it goes, that it's pretty easy for you to get that screwdriver, in this case, down, you have moisture. You know if you hit a rock, you get a ting. But as it gets harder and harder, you'll know that you don't have moisture, and you'll know if you hit a root, but you won't really hurt it. But gallons, it kind of gets tricky. With trees, they say for every inch of caliper, about 10 gallons. For shrubs, at least 5 gallons. And then perennials, it just depends. If you've got a well-established tree, you need to water a minimum of the entire area underneath the drip line, and preferably further out. If your trees are in a lawn, best way to do it, grab a lawn sprinkler, grab the hose, turn it on. People are worried right now, if we water our lawn, it's going to come out of dormancy. Well, the reality is most of our lawns are all cool season grasses, so bluegrass, fescues, they would be green right now if they had snow and they had moisture. They're not going to start rapidly growing, but you may see new growth, but it's nothing to worry about. Actually, a lot of people who put in turf grass last year are going to lose it if they haven't watered over this winter.
Okay, so I want to talk about our visual aids here. Some of the signs to look for. We'll kind of have to go through it quickly because we just have a few minutes left. But what do we have?
Well, like this one right here, this is something unique. This is actually a hardy gardenia. It's something that's new. It's actually hardy to 0. But in plants like this are in pots and they're not protected. When we get down below 0, you're going to see winter kill. This one normally would be an evergreen, but we had colder temperatures. It wasn't protected from those cold temperatures as much. So what you've seen is all the leaves have browned out. They look dead. which these are, but at the base of the plant you've got new growth that's green, and all of this tissue is actually alive. So what's going to happen is these are going to come off in spring, you're going to get new leaves. You may have to trim off a couple of inches because it may have died because you've got a real small root system.
So water it and it'll be okay?
Water it and it should pop out.
Okay, what about these guys?
Okay, these guys are actually plants that I wasn't able to get planted this fall, so I've had them healed in, which means I've put them in a bed, buried the entire container with soil to keep the soil temperatures warmer, and then I've watered them at least once a month. But this is a U, and what we see is even though the plant had plenty of moisture, really cold temperature, drying winds, and this area has gone to the yellow, it's crispy, it'll just break off, and this is just going to need to be pruned, but the rest of it's fine.
Okay, so still watering it normally.
Still fine.
Okay, what about the other?
And you can see the heather was protected, and you can't even see anything. You can actually see the old flowers from the fall. It's still fine. The next one's actually a raspberry. So it looks the worst, but one of the things about the raspberry is it's going to shoot new canes from the root system. But if the soil's not moist, we're going to lose root system, which means you're going to lose the future of the plant.
So is there a way to make sure it stays okay?
Main thing is keep the moisture in the root system, and you don't have to worry about those canes because it'll shoot up, and most of those canes are actually still viable. But again, you'll be pruning them out to increase vigor of the plant when spring comes.
Okay, so moral of this story is don't wait. We just have about a minute left. Water now. Is there anything else that people need to know?
Best thing is always water at least once a month if you don't have snow cover. And if you've got questions about your plants or you don't know how to care for them, definitely bring them to the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension and we'll help you out with any kind of questions. Simple,
Okay,
small.
yeah, and in that vein, I do have posted on our website for more information on this. You can just head to KTVN.com. We do have a link to the Cooperative Extension's website. Now, coming up on Face the State, this recent outbreak of the measles has reactivated the debate over vaccinations. I'll speak with a doctor about the virus and what kind of impact vaccines can have on your health right after the break.